Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 765, April the 28th, 2019, Sunday. Thank you so much for tuning in. A lot to talk about today, so let's get started. I want to thank Tiana for posting up in the comments section on the last video. In her comment, she suggested I take a look at the most recent Periscope by Jack Posobik. So I did that. And turns out that was a very good tip, Tiana. It's a very interesting Periscope that Jack did. So for those of you who did not see it, I'm going to go through some of the highlights of that, but you may want to take a look at that yourself. So Jack Posobik does this Periscope, which he does a lot of these things. And of course, for those of you who don't know, Jack Posobik is one of the I guess anchors or whatever. He's on One American News Network. He's former military intelligence officer, and he's a pretty straight shooter. I'm not a huge fan, but I do watch his stuff from time to time, and I kind of, I take a look at what he says, and for the most part, I think he has a lot of credibility. There are a lot of people who question his motives. I know that. I don't get too deep into that sort of thing. I just take what I can use, and what I can, I discard. If it doesn't work with what I'm looking at, then I think, okay, that doesn't work for me. But he does a lot of good work there, and I think this is worth commenting on, and you can make your own judgment as to what you think. So I'm just going to tell you what he said in his Periscope. So Posobik is talking about the recent text from Peter's Been Stroking Us and Lisa Page, and the fact that they suggest that they had placed or were trying to place a mole inside the Trump transition team, specifically within Pence's team. And so Posobik says that he was originally given information on this story back on April the 8th, but that he really couldn't talk about it at that time or say too much about it. He did send out a tweet or make some statement, but it was very vague because he didn't want to compromise his source or come out and drop names before anything was really, proven, or at least ways until there was more information to back it up. So he kind of a little bit set on it, but he did throw this sort of tip out there. So anyhow, he says he was given the story on April 8th about Pitcock and his wife Catherine. And of course, Pitcock is the Josh Pitcock was the chief of staff to Mike Pence at the time, and that's the person in question. And also his wife Kate, or Catherine, however you want to call her, and she was of course one of the chief analysts for Peter's Been Stroking Us in counterintelligence. So Posobik says that he was told that there was an official channel between Pence, Peter's Been Stroking Us, and Andy McCabe. And that this was carried out via Pitcock's wife, Catherine. And this all comes into play into the things that were going on regarding Michael Flynn. And what I believe was a setup of Michael Flynn. So Posobik says that McCabe Andy McCabe altered 302s to Pence. This is something we talked about a long time ago when we were talking about these 302s and why everybody's trying to get their hands on them. And it was suggested back then that there was some doctoring of the 302s. And of course, this FBI agent who was in on this Q&A with Flynn, this Joe Pientka, is apparently one of the people who is cooperating with Inspector General Huckleberry Horowitz. So Posobik says that McCabe gave altered 302s to Pence. Then Pence goes in and tells the president that Flynn lied based on what he sees in these doctored or altered 302s. And of course, Trump is then forced to fire Flynn. Now, remember that during this time, Pence and McCabe, or I should say, put it this way, McCabe had invited Pence to have a meeting, and Pence did take the meeting with McCabe. This would have been in early 2017, not too long after Trump was inaugurated. And at that time, it is believed that this meeting was a meeting regarding the 302s and, of course, Mike Flynn and what was going on with that. So, it wasn't just a get-to-know-you meeting. It was actually a meeting of substance. McCabe had asked Pence. Pence took the meeting, and it's believed that the meeting was about things regarding Michael Flynn. Now, Posobik says that he was told that Pitcock was a spy working for the FBI to spy on President Trump. He was told this back on April the 8th. And of course, there's another thing that was going on shortly after the meeting with Pence and McCabe, and when some of this information was coming out and people were questioning the 302s, we were talking about how they got Flynn in the phone call. They were saying that they just picked him up because they had Kislyak under constant surveillance, and that's how they picked Flynn up. But there was people saying, wait, did they get a FISA on Flynn? Is that how they got it? So all this kind of stuff is what we were talking about back at this time period in early 2017, January, February, March 2017. And it was also at about that time, in the early spring of 2017, we heard about these total renovations going on in certain areas of the White House, the Oval Office, the area where Trump eats, a meeting room there that's off the West Wing. These areas were all being completely rehabilitated, including ripping them down to the bare walls. And we suspected at that time, almost in a joking fashion, that maybe they were looking for listening devices that may have been planted. And so now it's looking more and more like, if it's true that Pitcock was involved in this, he was counterintelligence. So, his wife was counterintelligence. So it's very likely that if they wanted to plant some listening devices or something like that, it probably would have been Pitcock or one of the other counterintelligence people that they were trying to put into the transition team that would have planted these devices. Whether or not they found devices or not has never been disclosed. But these things are all swirling around this story. Now, Katie, or Catherine Pitcock, of course, was Peter Ben Strokanist's main analyst in counterintelligence, and she was working on the Flynn case. And of course, this brings back this email chain that many of us talked about back at the time when the Billy Bush tape came out. And we remember those series of emails that the chain included Pence and Ryan and Reince Priebus. And these email chains were suggesting that they were going to push Trump out because of what was disclosed on the Billy Bush tape, where Trump makes the grab him by the pussy comment. And there was also suggestion in that email chain that Ryan was going to have a rally of some sort, a speech of some sort up in Wisconsin, and they were going to get Mike Pence up there with Reince Priebus, and having successfully convinced Trump to walk away because of what was revealed in the Billy Bush interview, they were going to formally announce Mike Pence to then be the new candidate for president for the Republicans. And then, of course, Pence would then say, okay, yeah, and Ryan's going to be my wingman, my VP. So that was kind of what they were trying to cook up. That's what we ascertained from that email chain that we were looking at back at that time. Of course, that did not happen. No one cares if Trump grabs him by the pussy. So, basically, what is it that we need now? Well, certainly what we need now is we need the notes. Any notes that we can find or can be located regarding the meeting between Andy McCabe and Mike Pence. We need the texts and emails between Pitcock, his wife, Catherine, and anyone in the FBI counterintelligence division, or Comey, or anyone else. Any official emails or texts between Pitcock and his wife and anyone in the swamp, you might say. We don't need their personal emails between their kids and grandma and the coach. We need their emails and texts from their work-related activities. How many of you trust Mike Pence? I have always been suspicious of Pence because he's the establishment, and he doesn't seem like the type of guy who would have supported Trump. In fact, I don't think he was supporting Trump until Trump announced him as his VP. So I've always had a healthy skepticism and a bit of a suspicious nature about Mike Pence. And I will remain to hold the suspicion until I feel good enough about him, that I can feel okay that he's not somehow compromised. But he is an establishment neocon, and that's why I'm suspicious of him. He might have been put in there so that he can keep a close, watchful eye on Trump and report back to his handlers, you might say. So I am very suspicious of Pence, and I always have been. We also need to ask a few questions. Why was Pence's chief of staff recruited, if in fact he was? Why did they seek out Pence? I mean, if he's loyal to the president, we have to assume that he would have a chief of staff who was loyal. So why would counterintelligence feel that it was comfortable for them to make a move on the chief of staff of Mike Pence? Why did they feel comfortable in doing that? Why did Pence take the meeting with McCabe, knowing good and well that McCabe was part of the takedown squad of Pence's boss, the president? Mike Pence needs to come totally clean, and we need to find out a lot more about what was going on with Mike Pence, Andy McCabe, his chief of staff, and the wife of Mr. Pitcock, Catherine. We need to find out much more about what was going on here, because quite honestly, it stinks. It looks like a duck. It's barking like a duck. Therefore, it's usually a duck. Alrighty, so that's what we know from the Jack Posobik Periscope. Thank you, Tiana. I appreciate that. Good work, as usual. Now, let's move on to the next order of the day. That would be this article from Jeff Carlson at the Epoch Times. As most of you know, since we've been learning this stuff about Ukraine in the past 3 weeks or so, I've been checking on Ukraine every day. It's one of the items every day I check off my list of things to look into. Especially because day before yesterday, there was on FoxNews.com just a very short little 2 or 3 sentence story, very short story, just saying that William Barr is looking into connections between Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, and the Ukraine government at that time, the Ukraine government of Poroshenko. As you know, he's been defeated recently in an election by a comedian who won with 75% of the vote. Now, who this comedian is supportive of, I don't know if he's a Trump supporter or if he likes Trump or what, but it appears that since Poroshenko was defeated, that things seem to be, there seems to be some sense of cooperation going on here. This prosecutor in Ukraine, who was being stonewalled from work, coming here and having a meeting with the Inspector General, or certainly people at the DOJ, to work on these investigations, was completely rebuffed, not given a visa, and that was this Volkova woman, the ambassador, who was blocking that. But now we have this prosecutor telling John Solomon that he is planning on a trip to the United States and is going to be sharing some information, hopefully looking for some cooperation on these investigations. Now, if this story is true by Fox News, that William Barr is looking into what was going on in the Ukraine during that period of 2015, 2016, 2017, and the strange happenings involving Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, particularly his son Hunter Biden, the investigations that were going on, the leaked information on Manafort, and everything else that we've discussed going on in Ukraine at that time. If William Barr is looking into this, there's a lot to find. That is a deep and dark rabbit hole. And if Barr goes down that rabbit hole, this thing's going to get pretty dark. Let's put it that way. Because whenever you start meddling in Ukraine, you get into Ukraine, there's a lot of... It's one of the most corrupt places on earth, to be quite honest with you. So, anyway, let's go through Jeff Carlson's article here. So the article is titled, Joe Biden, Obama officials stood to gain from Ukraine influence. And the subheadline is that Ukraine played a key role in conjuring up the Trump-Russia narrative. Not only did they play a key role, that's where it started. Okay, so as Carlson writes here, Biden played a key role in the putsch that forced Yanukovych out of office. That was the Maidan coup. And of course, that was closely coordinated with the technocrats at the UN, Yatsenuk and company, along with Victoria F. the EU Newland, along with, of course, one of the many organizations funded by Soros, was very deeply involved in the funding for that operation. Now, Biden used his influence to help create the NABU, that's the National Anti-Corruption Bureau. And in fact, it's the exact opposite of an anti-corruption bureau. It was a bureau they set up to move all the real damaging investigations into the NABU where they could be killed. So basically, it's a rogue organization. And the leak that got Manafort fired came from the NABU. And one of the three people involved in that leak has already been convicted. The other two are currently being investigated and will likely be charged because both of them are on an audio tape that's currently in the possession of the prosecutor, where they talk about helping Hillary Clinton and giving the Black Ledger to Chalupa and Confusion GPS and Michael Isikoff. It's being reported here that Biden used his influence to stop the investigation into his son Hunter Biden. The case was moved into the NABU where it was squelched. Then the chief prosecutor that had been investigating Hunter Biden was fired. The case involved an energy company named Burisma, B-U-R-I-S-M-A, and Hunter Biden was a board member on that, he was a member of the board of that company. Biden told Poroshenko that the U.S. would not go through with the $1 billion loan guarantee to Ukraine unless Poroshenko fired the top prosecutor, Viktor Shokin. Shokin was the guy who was investigating this corrupt organization that Hunter Biden sat on the board of. So Poroshenko did fire Shokin early in 2016. Now, the case involved primarily money laundering and embezzlement. Hunter Biden's lobbying firm received $3 million in payments from Burisma. Now, all of this info was given to John Solomon by the current UK prosecutor, Yuri Lysenko, who is the guy who wants to meet with William Barr. There were many meetings between the Obama administration, Joe Biden, the FBI, Alexandra Chalupa, and corrupt Ukraine officials throughout the Obama presidency. Those meetings largely involved the Biden issue and Paul Manafort. Clearly, the Obama administration worked closely with Ukraine to cook up the Trump-Russia narrative, and that's how we got here. So, yes, if William Barr is interested in looking into the things that were going on in Ukraine, and Giuliani, of course, has been talking a lot about this, all he really needs to do is go read Cheryl Atkinson's piece, which she wrote almost a year ago now. It was last summer. That's a very long read. It's a very long article. It's not even an article. It's a small book. It took me like an hour and a half to read it. And a lot of it ended up in my timeline. And so Cheryl Atkinson has absolutely done the deep dive. I mean, William Barr, all he has to do is go read that. I mean, it's all there. It's all there. Everything we're talking about now, it was all, Cheryl Atkinson had all this over a year ago. And of course, she's been spied on. She was spied on by the Obama administration, likely as a result of the investigation she was doing into all of that. Okay, so let's move on to the next thing, and that would be Mr. Potato Head, John Brennan, who was on MSNBC. He was asked about Trump's comments on Sean Hannity that he was saying that Brennan, along with Clapper and McCabe and Comey, were involved in a coup. So Mr. Potato Head, John Brennan, says, quote, "I don't think it's surprising at all that we hear these sociopathic ramblings. I've testified in front of Congress, and I'll absolutely do it again." Oh yeah, you testified in front of Congress, Mr. Potato Head, and you lied through your teeth. But they don't really do anything in Congress, especially when Rodenstein was in charge and Uncle Bob was running wild. It's going to be different this time, Mr. Potato Head, because we have a real attorney general. At least we believe we do. And next time you won't be testifying to Congress. You'll be in front of a grand jury. And hopefully a prosecutor with a pair of stones. And if you lie to them, like you did to Congress, your ass is going to jail, Mr. Potato Head. But you're going there anyway. And as far as being a sociopath, you describe Trump as a sociopath. You are the sociopath, Mr. Brennan. Look at the definition. Well, here we go. It looks like Pete Buttigieg, Mayor Pete, has now been introducing his husband, is now starting to get into the picture. So now we have Buttigieg's husband, who's now been appearing at campaign events with Mayor Pete. And of course, the left-wing media is fawning all over him. Mayor Pete and his husband are talking about, of course, having children. Now, if they can pull that off, he really should be president of the United States. Because as far as I know, two men cannot procreate. So it appears that Mayor Pete's husband's name is Chasten Buttigieg. That's a fitting name. Let's see. Who do I want to be looking at for First Lady for the next 4 years? Pete Buttigieg's husband, Chasten, or Melania? That's not even close. That's not even close. I really don't want to see that. To be quite honest with you, I don't think I could handle that. That's a little bit too much for me. I'm fairly open-minded on these issues, but that's, for me, would be very difficult to have, a president and his wife being a man. That would take a little bit of adjustment for me, quite honestly. But I'll leave that up to you guys, what you think about that. Then we had the pencil neck fool, Adam Schiff for brains. He was on with Bill Maher. Of course, Bill Maher is a hardcore anti-Trumper, but he was explaining to Adam Schiff, he's like, hey man, everybody put their money on Mueller. Mueller gave it his best shot. He came up with nothing. There's nothing there. And the fact that you're still going after Trump makes it look like you're stalking Trump. And of course, the pencil neck geek got very red in the face and said, well, yeah, and I really don't know if we would go forward with impeachment at this point, but we need to investigate because blah, 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 the whole 9 yards. So Schiff is doing his best to try to walk this back and still try to hold his ground. He's in a tough position. He knows that Pelosi is not behind it because they know that it's a disaster. But they don't really have to have impeachment hearings. whole point is to harass Trump. They can harass him with tons of investigations and media propaganda. They don't really need to go down the impeachment route to do that. And that's exactly what they're going to do. So yes, Bill Maher telling Adam Schiff that he looks like a stalker. Next up, Trump is still asking questions about the DNC server. Yep. Why is he doing that? Because Trump understands very well that as he's looking at his strategy to out this coup, he knows that the perps are going to fall back on the old reliable Russia was meddling in our elections. And based on that, they were justified in doing all that they did because there was suspicious things going on. And so Trump understands that the root of all of this is to bust up this entire false narrative. And he also understands that Russia is key in a lot of foreign policy things that are going on, especially with North Korea, especially with China. And Trump would like to have a better relationship with Putin, but this whole thing has prevented him from doing that. It's been a problem, and he wants to eradicate that problem. Now, proving that there was a coup against him will solve a lot of things, but it won't fix the problem that we have with the fake Russian collusion narrative. In order to fix that, you need to go back to the origins of that, which are in Ukraine, and it's even at about the same time that was all going on. The alleged hack of the DNC servers by Russia. Maybe that's what they're hoping to get out of Julian Assange. I don't know. I'm just speculating here. But Trump is absolutely right. The key to this blowing up this entire narrative so that Trump can conduct really good foreign policy is to bring out the truth about what happened with the DNC. Was it hacked or not? And if so, who did it? I don't believe it was a hack. I believe it was an inside leak. And I believe the person who was involved in that was Seth Rich. And I think Trump believes that as well, by the way. He knows all about Seth Rich. Probably so does Barr. Well, it appears that a lot of people are forgetting something, which is that Biden wanted to use this statement down in Charlottesville to try to link Trump to being a racist or a bigot or a fascist or what have you. But many people forget that Biden was a protege of KKK Robert Byrd, Senator Robert Byrd from Virginia. And he spoke highly of Biden. That should not be forgotten. And of course, it's very funny to watch the left-wing media as they go crazy over Biden. Oh, now Biden's in. He's the taste of the day. He's the great thing of the day. But if you went back to CNN and MSNBC 6 months ago, it was all Michael Avenatti. Oh, Michael Avenatti was the superstar of the Demon Rat Party. He was the one that was going to bring him out of the doldrums. He's the one that was going to come out and attack Trump and beat Trump in 2020. He was the star. Now, where is he? Then, of course, they went with Beto, the skateboarder. Oh, it's the skateboarder. Once they got rid of Avenatti, it was on to the skateboarder. Now that the skateboarder has collapsed, they're moving on to Buttigieg. And then, of course, Buttigieg gets his 2 or 3 weeks of fame, and then all of a sudden Biden throws his hat in the ring, and all of a sudden they completely flip, and now it's all about Biden. They just go from one to the other. And the thing is, every one of these guys are losers. And they're all white males with a lot of money. That's right. It's just the left-wing media. Just go from one failure to another. It's all they do. They go from one fail to another. And it's quite entertaining to watch, quite honestly. Then we have Joe Bite Me. Probably he may win the dumbass of the week for this comment. This right here might nail it down for Uncle Joe Bite Me. He made this comment yesterday that during the Obama administration there was not one whisper of scandal. Oh, God, you got to be kidding me. The entire 8 years of Obama was one gigantic scandal. We're learning right now about the incredible amount of criminal activity that went on under the tutelage of Obama. And Biden's up to his eyeballs in it. I mean, this is just extraordinary how he can make a comment like this. I mean, talk about chutzpah, man. Oh my God. And wait till 3 or 4 or 5 months from now when all of this is unfurled and it's all dumped and the entire truth is pretty much out there for everyone to see. Biden's up to his eyeballs in all of it. He may be needing to lawyer up. He may be in criminal liability. He may be facing a grand jury. telling us what he knew and when he knew it. And let's not forget that it was Sally Yates who pissed off Inspector General Horowitz, Huckleberry Horowitz, when he tried to look into the DOJ NSD, and Yates wrote that letter telling him he was not allowed to look into the DOJ NSD, and he took issue with that and went to the Congress about it. Not only that, he led 70 department inspector generals who had to go to Congress to complain that Obama was trying to hinder their investigations. And let's not forget that the rotten Reverend Clinton, once she became Secretary of State, she was supposed to be involved in the decision to bring in and appoint an inspector general for her department at the State Department. And she never did. She never nominated anybody, and they never had an inspector general over at the State Department when the rotten Reverend Clinton was Secretary of State during her entire tenure. Not a whisper of scandal. You got to be kidding me. Man, oh man. Uncle Joe bite me. This guy is so out of touch, man. I can't wait till the first time Uncle Joe finds himself in front of a group of SJWs trying to answer for a lot of things he's said and done in the past. It is going to be absolutely hilarious, and I predict that Joe Bite Me is going to win a lot of Dumbass of the Week awards before this is all said and done. Now, one last thing, just very briefly. I said a couple of days ago, a few videos ago, I said, it's hard to imagine, sitting here watching the Democrats attacking William Barr because he wants to investigate the investigators, so to speak. And they're attacking his character and his integrity. Now, you can tell when you look at Barr and when you watch him testify, if there's one thing that this dude cares a lot about, that is his integrity and his reputation and his character. You can tell this guy is kind of, cares about that stuff, right? And that's exactly why they're attacking him. And I said, it's crazy to be attacking the guy who's sitting on all the evidence to create a lot of problems for you and your party. He's the wrong guy to be attacking, so why are they doing it? And so I was looking again at that video clip of Jean Shaheen asking Barr, and when he came back to her and said, oh yeah, there was spying going on. There was spying going on. I'm just not sure if it was predicated or not. And that's what I'm looking into. And the look on her face, that was not phony. That was not fake. Jean Shaheen was literally shocked to hear that come out of his mouth. Why is that? Well, it's for the same reason that whenever you talk about any of the evidence we have in Spygate that we've been compiling over the past 2 and some odd years, that it just doesn't seem to resonate with a person who doesn't follow the story or who is a leftist. They simply can't comprehend it. And it's because they simply have not been able to, they've not been interested, first of all, in even looking at it. They've never believed it. And they've been totally focused, total tunnel vision on Trump-Russia collusion. And the other side of it, they have not even considered. So that's why this is real. The leftists and the people who are attacking Barr, they really do not know the evidence that is right there in my timeline. The evidence that I've brought forward on my TowerGate videos. Evidence that other people, H.A. Goodman, Dan Bongino, all these great reporters, Sarah Carter and John Solomon, all this evidence and all these things that we've been talking about for 2.5 years, they're oblivious to it. They haven't been paying attention to it. And when they hear about it, they blow it off. It's just conspiracy theory. So that's why they're attacking Barr. They have no idea about the evidence against them. That's why they're going to be rattled out of this world when he finally drops the bomb right on top of their head. And it's coming. Oh, yes, it's coming. Just stay tuned. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. See you. Bye.